Hello, everybody. I'm Rob Wallace here in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm an evolutionary epidemiologist with the People's CDC, here with an update on the COVID-19 pandemic. This week, we'll cover the state of global COVID, the state of US COVID, and the repeated blowback that the COVID and monkeypox outbreaks represent. We begin with global COVID. In the graph in red, the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center reports another sharp increase to 6.7 million new COVID cases worldwide for the week ending July 17th. That's more new weekly cases than for any other COVID wave so far except Omicron this past winter. The number of global weekly deaths, there in white, underwent another increase to 14,300 deaths this past week, although representing fewer cases than in previous waves. In green, we see 62 million new vaccinations were administered this week worldwide. This New York Times map shows hotspots over the past week in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Australasia. There in purple, France, Germany, Austria, Italy, Greece, Taiwan, Australia, and New Zealand continue to be epicenters in average daily new cases per 100,000 population. Over the past couple of weeks, Costa Rica, Belgium, Switzerland, Slovenia, Japan, and South Korea all returned to hotspot status. Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Peru, Bolivia, Paraguay, Argentina, Finland, Tunisia, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Iran, Iraq, and Malaysia hosted increases in caseloads. Panama, Botswana, Portugal, Spain, and Norway saw declines from late June. Here's a 7-day average of daily confirmed COVID cases per million people from the beginning of the outbreak on the left all the way to today on the right. We can see the spikes in cases when Omicron emerged in late 2021. The present hotspots we noted in the previous map are trending in different directions. Taiwan's outbreak appears in decline. Greece and Costa Rica are hosting large new spikes. Japan and South Korea are hosting new surges. Australia, New Zealand, France, Italy, and Germany continue to cycle through their months-long epidemics. The US, the UK, and Brazil are reporting slow but steady increases. We see that none of the countries highlighted here, all in gray, are reporting national testing data as of July 3rd. Here we have COVID deaths per million people for these same countries. We see here that the US, Brazil, and Germany are showing slight increases. Italy, the UK, and Australia are showing more robust increases, and New Zealand and Greece are displaying sharp spikes. The virus also continues to evolve. This is a family tree for COVID samples over the past 6 months, although rooted from the beginning of the pandemic at the center of the diagram and branching outward as SARS-2 evolved. We see in dark blues and purples the early variants like alpha and beta. In the light blue are samples of the Delta variant. We see over the past 6 months that multiple Omicron subvariants, they're in yellow, BA1 and 2, in red, BA2.12, and in the light and dark orange, BA4 and 5, are continuing to explore SARS-2's evolutionary space. Across the Omicron group, we find molecular changes from the root of the SARS-2 tree, numbering as high as 56 amino acid changes and 16 deletions. What that all means is that the virus continues to evolve, along the way experimenting with the human immune system to the tune of over 6 million new infections a week during what governments worldwide are treating as the end of the pandemic. We see that hospitalizations are all up in countries in our highlighted set. There appear a function of the surge in caseloads, the reemergence of deadlier subvariants such as BA5, a near global retraction in non-pharmaceutical interventions like mask mandates, and as we have talked about previously on COVID this week, a developing mismatch between Omicron and COVID vaccines. That combo, evolving subvariants, probing our defenses, and a willful public health surrender does not bode well for this winter's likely surge. This summer, there appears a convergence of denialism, with public health officials shrugging. Who wants to wear a mask during record temperatures governments also did nothing about? Turning to the US, we see much of the country hosting a raised floor in COVID cases. The Northeast and Upper Midwest are still characterized by a relative decline in COVID, but we also see another surge apparently beginning in New Jersey and New York City. We see monster surges in Appalachia spilling into southern Illinois and Missouri, and all across the South, especially in Louisiana, Alabama, and parts of Florida and Texas. We see caseloads rising all across California, the Southwest, and county by county across the Plains states. Alaska and Puerto Rico continue to be hit badly. There are other ways of tracking COVID. The levels of SARS-2 virus detected in the wastewater that comes through our sewage plants, as reported here July 3rd through the 17th, shows little change from our map 3 weeks ago. Sewage plants in red represent loads at 80 to 100% of their previously recorded levels. We see these scattered across the US, Oregon, California, Colorado, Texas, Illinois, Kentucky, and Western New York. The cool blues of recorded lows in the Northeast are starting to be infiltrated by hotter oranges from New Jersey up on north. On the other hand, we see in light blues considerable declines over the last 15 days, especially in California, Utah, parts of Colorado, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Illinois. That might only mean declines off very large peaks and still representing widespread COVID. At the same time, we see 15-day surges in red in Wisconsin, Illinois, New York State, and North Carolina. Over the past few months, COVID This Week has reported on the rapid deterioration in COVID surveillance, including hospitals choosing to report caseloads only weekly or not at all, or redefining COVID by whether the patient needed key antivirals. We also have seen the rise of at-home rapid antigen tests, the results of which patients are under no obligation to report to health department. It appears the willful abandonment of surveillance is finally extracting its costs. So for instance, we see here in San Francisco that previously SARS-2 loads in sewage there in blue tracked COVID caseloads there in red. That appears no longer the case, with COVID caseloads during BA4 and 5 likely way underreported. To sum up, we see almost the entire country, 93% of US counties, filled in at the highest level of community transmission, including what 3 weeks ago were sites in COVID decline in Iowa, Pennsylvania, and New York State. With much of the country that is reporting in tests for COVID-19 clocking in at 20% or more positive, and much of the country, especially through the South, Appalachia, and the Plain States, with less than 30% of the population with 2 COVID vaccine shots, and not even considering the subsequent boosters. As on the global stage, SARS-2 continues to evolve here in the US. We see here new variants first emerging and then dominating in cycles of every 2 months. The BA2 Omicron subvariant in pink was replaced by the BA2.12 subvariant in orange, which is now being replaced by subvariants BA4 and 5 in green, with BA5 surging ahead to account for 78% of new cases this past week. Each new COVID variant marks the US's and the world's concerted failure to control infectious disease. Entirely new pathogens underscore the point. Monkeypox, a previously marginal orthopox virus that can at times induce very painful lesions in the anus, genitals, and mouth, has spread to 43 US states, with patients getting little access to follow-up care or the vaccines that offer only disease mitigation. Each new emergent pathogen represents a roll of this socio-ecological die, with deforestation and development in the far reaches of capitalist production, springing even the most marginal pathogens out onto the global trade and travel networks to reach countries that have taken great pride in refuting their own public health systems in the name of open economies. Here, Rebecca Levine's team maps their ecological niche model of monkeypox distribution through sub-Saharan Africa, including in a Congo basin, that since has suffered considerable deforestation, especially there in the reds. While most land deals underlying extraction in the Congo basin are European and Asian in origin, the Land Matrix Observatory identified 7 deals with direct American investment, including this 348,000 hectare deal with US registered Congo Emissions Management and Group Blattner Elwin. And many of the European and Asian efforts in the Congo and across West Africa end up supplying US customers, including wood siding to retailers Home Depot and Menards. Monkeypox in the US may be a matter of a blowback. It's not that any one deal let loose this strain of the virus, but that pathogens are in part sprung by turning food forests into cleared land marked by a loss of the environmental complexity that once bottled up these pathogens. And that's COVID This Week from the People CDC. You can learn more about the People CDC and read this week's COVID weather report at peoplecdc.org.